overrepresentation in crimes that were reported, not just crimes that were charged, crimes that were reported versus the prison population, they found that blacks and Hispanics were statistically underrepresented. The biggest problem for blacks and Hispanics living in the inner city is that there aren't enough police officers there to actually take care of them and police the crime and make their city safe for investment in education.
This is actually a problem in our democracy. I will just sort of, can I put an asterisk here that it is an actual problem in our democracy. If we can't, as two relatively intelligent human beings, agree on basic facts, that you look at the at least statistics and you say, oh look, there's a study, there's a study, there's a study. Hey, there's a massive overrepresentation. Let's just look at drug crimes, which are the largest proportion. So you don't want to talk about gun crime, drug crimes. The predominant reason why people are incarcerated in this country is mostly because of nonviolent drug offenses, and study after study after study after study. Black and Latino folks, far overrepresented in terms of arrest, in terms of charging, in terms of sentences, get harsher sentences when they're sentenced.
That's not true.
That is true. It is true. So let's just move on. I'll ask you a question. In 1989, this is really an interesting one to me. In 1989, Mr. Trump. This goes to the, how did he come to be? In 1989, he said, roughly quoting here, that if I could do it all over again, I'd come back as a well-educated black. Because, he said at the time, black people have have advantages, or more advantaged, have it easier in America now than white people. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Today there are more, in law, advantages given to black people than white people. In law.
Okay, so we're done. I'm good. I mean, I just...
In law. I'm not talking about... Well, hold on. I'm not talking about interpersonal religion. Sally, I don't know how you can't believe that, considering that the Supreme Court just determined that discrimination against white people in favor of black people is okay.
No, they didn't.
You realize those laws are written in a facially race-neutral way, so if you're going to say that your immigration policy is facially race-neutral, then... Right? You're not arguing about it. You're race-baiting and telling people that they're not getting a fair shot.
No, it was not written in a racially neutral way. Facially race-neutral way. They're not written that way because they specifically say that there can be points given based on race. That's not racially neutral.
You didn't answer my question. Do you think it's easier to be a white man, or easier to be a black man in America than white man?
I think it depends on the black person or white person you are. I think it depends where you're born. I think it's easier to become a Palestinian than it is to be a
by and large. Do you think it's easier, let me ask you this way,
I don't
it's easier to be a man or a woman? Do you think that there's sexism in America now?
I think there's sexism in America, actually.
No, is there sexism?
If there are sexists who perform sexist acts, then there's sexism.
No, that's not America. I'm asking
you're asking, is America structurally sexist? The answer is no.
Women are underrepresented in boardrooms, women are underrepresented in Congress, women are underrepresented in 270 years of the White House because...
Okay, so I'm not saying there wasn't historic sexism as far as the White House. Was that it? It has faded away gradually to the point where women are now... This is how change happens.
It has not.
The fact is that when it comes to college admissions, for example, there are more women than men going to college. That's correct. When it comes to graduate schools, there are more women than men going to graduate schools. Yes. Okay, when it comes to jail, which you just cited, the vast, well over 90% of the people in jail are men. Is that because the system is sexist against men? Jailing system is now sexist against men because there are more men than women in prison? That's really your argument?
No, it does happen also be the case that more men commit crimes.
There you go. Bill is what Bernie Sanders has on his in the Democratic side. Does that continue to build, or do we kind of move back towards the middle? Well, I think that there's a better chance that the Sanders movement builds than the Trump movement builds. I think the Trump movement is built around somebody who has 100% name recognition, is a celebrity. As you mentioned, Tom Cruise ran the same campaign in 2008 and got negative 8% of the vote. The fact that Trump is so successful is largely due to the fact that people know him from TV, and TV creates people who people like and make friendly, and so people kind of brush off the fact that he's the kind of turd sandwich that he is. As far as Bernie Sanders,
turd sandwich?
Yes. Okay.
Well, that's hashtag turd sandwich, in case people were wondering.
Bernie Sanders, I think, because he is the worst representative of his philosophy possible, and still he almost overcame Hillary Clinton, that's national movement. Right, like Trump, so I think that what happens on the right is basically, it depends how bad Trump loses. If Trump loses very narrowly, I think there's going to be a lot of recrimination against people like me who didn't vote for him. They're going to try and claim the conservatives sunk him. It was our fault that they didn't do well with the establishment and only back him more. If he gets schlonged, as he likes to put it, right? If he loses by 1,000 points, then it's good. Then I think the Trump coalition is still part of the conservative coalition, because every politics is a politics of coalition, unfortunately. But I think that they lose a leadership position in the Republican Party, and then I think it's a real battle between the old guard Jeb Bush crew and the new Ted Cruz crew, and they fight it out. On the left, I think that Hillary knows what's coming, and that's why she adopted half of Bernie's platform. So I think that the left is moving further to the left, and I think that the right, it's yet to determine whether they're going to move further to the right or further to the left. Do they go Kasich Republican, or do they go Cruz Republican?
Sally, does the language and rhetoric of the past few years, does it intensify? Do the words and the language, or does the...
Yes. It looks as though it's, I want to speak to, to that as the other question as well. This may sound surprising to some folks in the room, but when the Tea Party first came into existence, the very beginning, I was actually tremendously optimistic. Because you might remember, the Tea Party began not as a fight against, Washington per se, or Democrats, or healthcare, or anything like that, or immigration, whatever. It began as a fight against a taxpayer-funded bailout, right? Thanks. And I was against it too. Thank you. Yes, you can come. Right person. Yeah, Occupying Tea Party. Right. And Occupying Tea Party, very similar. And I thought, okay, finally, here we are in this country. It took the second greatest recession ever, but here we are in this country. Forget all the politics, forget all the partisanship. Here we can finally come together and see that we have all been getting screwed by the two-party system, which, by and large, I do stay on one side more than the other. I think it's done better, but right, the economy still does better with the Democratic president. But by and large, both parties have screwed the average person in this country for far too long. They have been too cozy with Wall Street, too cozy with big business, too cozy with the super rich. Don't forget, it was Barack Obama, it was my president, who extended the tax cuts to the rich. So, right, I was thinking, here we can get along, we can agree. We can have a real populist economic revolt in this country. Here's the problem. My side, the Bernie side, right? The people who are also concerned about how hard it's become for working people in this country are concerned about how hard it's become for white working people, and for black working people, and for Latino working people, for citizens, for immigrants, and for Muslims, and for Christians, and for Jews. We're concerned about how we move this country forward together for everyone, as we always have tried to do in the history of our beautiful, special, wonderful nation. Whereas Mr. Trump and the Republican right is increasingly pushing us toward that prosperity through bigotry vision that says we can only be great again if we push out the people who we think are making this country bad. That's gonna tear us apart. This is going to be a very important election about who we are as a nation and who we include. And I have to say, I'm scared, I'm sad. I love this country. I'm worried about where we're going. And I think it's a missed opportunity. We could have a really beautiful new populism in this country.
See, I'm not a populist, and the reason I'm not a populist is because I think we agree on the diagnosis, but I think we disagree on the treatment. And this is where the Tea Party and Occupy diverged, right? And the fact is, Occupy Wall Street occupied Wall Street. They didn't go and occupy D.C. What they should have done is that, in my view, is they should have gone and they should have occupied Congress, and they should have said, okay, guys, you're the ones who are signing the bailouts. You're the ones we elect. You're the ones who are answerable to us. The people who aren't answerable to us are the people who are over at these Wall Street firms. I mean, they're private-driven, profit-driven private companies. I don't have a right to tell any company how to do its business, but I do have a right to tell my politicians not to bail them out. And Occupy instead decided, and I think Bernie Sanders too, decided instead, they said, it's bad that we have government colluding with big business, so let's have more government colluding with big business, or more government taking over big business in general and regulating it. My view is it's bad to have government colluding with big business. Let's get government completely out of business or doing business at all. That I think is an honest ideological disagreement, which is why I've always said I think that I appreciate that Bernie Sanders is out there, at least to articulate that viewpoint, whereas I think Hillary's utterly incoherent. I think that she says sometimes things that appeal to the Wall Street crew, and sometimes she says things that appeal to the Bernie Sanders crew. Trump, I think, to lump Trump in with those of us who actually believe in constitutional individual liberty is ugly. It's the reason why I'm not voting for it. I mean, you can't look at me and say, you're Trump, when I have officially said I'm never Trump because I find the man to be disgusting. So it's very, so this is, so it's, and for you to blame, and by the way, he gave more money to your party than mine between 1980 and 2010. So the idea that Donald Trump is some sort of standard bearer for conservatism, I'm not saying Republicanism, because clearly he is right now, he's the nominee, but that he's the standard bearer for my philosophy, that's the whole reason I'm not supporting him, is because he's not a standard bearer for my philosophy.
All right, that's fair. Donald Trump is not a standard bearer for conservative philosophy. He is a standard bearer for xenophobia, white racial resentment, misogyny, and the idea that we can be a better country. We can be a better country by kicking certain groups out, by marginalizing certain other groups, and by that's what he's a standard bearer for. You're totally right on that. Good point. I agree on some of this. I mean, again, I think that there are certain things that Trump says about security that are true. I think that if you ignore the fact, as the Obama administration has done, that radical Islamic jihadism has a real impact on American safety, I think that you are endangering people. Yeah, but how can you say that?
One of the very first people who said that his blanket Muslim ban was idiotic and was problematic.
Okay, but there's a genuine question. I hope I can ask you, right? Without a personal attack response. Is you don't think that there's a connection between that? By the way, it's growing percentages of the Democratic Party. There's a majority of Republicans who support banning 30% of the world's population. But also a growing number of Democrats do. You don't think that the kinds of statements you've made, demonizing Muslims, painting a lot of Muslims with a broad radical jihadist stroke, you don't think that feeds into exactly the kind of mindset that now Donald Trump is picking up and running with?
To answer your question, let me ask you, I'm sorry to answer the question. The question is kind of telling you to get annoyed, but here's the I'll take it. Okay, so here is my question. Do you think that there is a distinction?
He's speaking to me as a Jew, so we're okay.
So my Yiddish preference. Okay, so here's the question. Do you think that there is a distinction worth drawing between Western civilization and radical Islamic civilization?
Yes.
You think there are differences within civilization? What would the indicators that somebody would be part of a radical Islamic civilization be that would be threatening Western civilization?
Yes, the way you asked it, let me try this. If what you're asking is, do I think there's a difference between cultures, religions, political traditions, and people within those traditions,
yes,
right? Because it always comes down, I wouldn't want to paint Christianity or Judaism with a broad stroke either, right? So let's not do that. If you're asking, is there a difference between extremist, hateful, anti-individual, anti-liberty groups and traditions, and those that, within those identities, within those groups, within those countries, that support freedom and progress and equality and inclusion? Absolutely, yes.
Okay, now let me ask you a second question. Do you think that there's any correlation between the culture and the percentage of people in that culture who believe the things you don't like? Meaning, that if you have a high percentage of one group, right, if you have a majority of British Muslims who believe that people who draw cartoons of Prophet Muhammad ought to be prosecuted, right, which I think we can all agree would be a bad thing. And if you believe that we should prosecute people who draw Muhammad, I do not. Okay, so we agree. So if that's it, and I assume that you would think that this is an anti-Western civilization position.
I'm not going to parse it in that way.
Why?
Well, listen.
I brought my pack of seagulls with me.
I know. I didn't want to make fun of you. You know, kind of sound like the seagulls in Finding Dory. Or no, Finding Nemo.
Yeah.
Right? All right, sorry. I just had a little challenge moment there. Thank you. Why? Yeah.
You can answer the question.
It's anti-democratic. You're right. I'm against it. I just wouldn't say it's Western civilization, right? I mean, it's
okay. So anti-democratic, you wouldn't. So
I'm against it. What do you want? I'm against it.
So
right? But I'm not going to say like there are lots of. So here's my answer to your question. When there are people in this country who I disagree with vehemently, who disagree with my right to exist. Let's not forget that after Orlando, there were Christian pastors. Now we can all disagree about whether they should be able to claim the label Christian, but whatever. Who said I should die? Who said it's good to die? And historically in this country, it has been a much greater number. I didn't want them kicked out of my country. I didn't say, hey, you can only come to this country if you believe this. We wouldn't have had a lot of people coming to this country, including by the way, my ancestors. So you're right. I'm against their views. I'm against their views. I'm against their views. I'm against their views.
This is the last follow-up. Okay, so I promise this is like chain of misleading.
That's cool. You go ahead.
So the last follow-up here is, if you believe that it's where do you draw the line? Where's the person you say this person doesn't get it?
Make him answer the question.
Listen, they want to actively do harm to our country, they don't get to come in.
Wait,
this is where the line comes down to.
So your only criteria is if they want to kill Americans.
That was actually my only criteria. You just kind of.
Sorry, go ahead.
But listen, I don't know. Do you want to sit here and rewrite, immigration law and refugee and asylum screening?
Yes.
Let's do that.
Yes, that sounds good. We have time. Let's do it.
Answer her question.
Yeah, answer her question.
I think the simplest way to answer your question is this. I do not want radical extremists, terrorists, or would-be terrorists who have any inkling of doing harm to this country or probably any other country, or anyone within this country, to come into our country. End of discussion. By the way, here's an interesting one. Nobody fucking else does either! There is no one who wants that, despite the right saying Obama is on the side of the terrorists. Where do you think that kind of rhetoric leads? I care about this country, you care about this country. Do not suggest that because I want to uphold the beautiful, incredible, and unique qualities of this country, in which we have been a safe space for people who've been fleeing wars, fleeing religious intolerance, and trying to become a beacon of progress in this world. Do not suggest that because of that I hate this country or want people who want to come here. But you have said it, or your side has said it about President Obama. Let's be clear, we all want this country to be good. We disagree about how to do it. I think we do it by being the kind of place where progressive Muslims can come and get support and build the kind of reformation that's needed in Islam, and not where we send a message to the entire world, screw you, if you're Muslim, we think we should bomb Mecca, we think we should spy on you, and right, that's not who we are.
Okay, nobody, okay, so. I think that President Obama doesn't believe in foundational principles of the country.
Do you think he cares about America?
I think he does, and I think that his picture of what he wants America to be is wildly different from mine. And I think that makes
better than some extent.
No, and I think this makes a difference. It's the same argument that I made about Donald Trump a few minutes ago. Remember, I said that I think Donald Trump's nationalism is a nationalism that's rootless. It's not rooted to constitutional principle. I think President Obama's nationalism is not rooted to anything that's authentically American. I think his nationalism.
Wait. Did you hear that? Hang on. He believes in America, and he loves America and wants the best for America, but his principles aren't anything authentically American.
Yes.
That's double-speak then.
No, it isn't, because the fact is he said the exact same thing. Right? He said that his patriotism is the same as the patriotism of the Greeks or the Brits, the same way that they were patriotic about their countries, he's patriotic about his. So you can quote him, not me.
Okay, so if I say I'm patriotic about my country, like the British who just voted for Brexit, as Donald Trump has, or any number of folks on the right in this country, if I analogize my patriotism to British patriotism, I'm saying my patriotism is an American.
I'm saying that's all American exceptionalism is to you, which was the question that prompted his response, and that's meaningless. Because if you
call them un-American, and that tells me you can't say, oh, immigrants, they're coming here, they're taking our jobs, they're not integrated. No, I mean, right? They're less integrated. They don't have this country's best interest in heart, and then say, oh my gosh, how did we get to be so anti-immigrant? And you can't say, oh, all Muslims believe in Sharia law, and we're all radicals, and we should bomb Mecca, and oh my gosh, why do we want to ban Muslims?
Why do you lump every immigrant together from every place as though every single person who's coming in has exactly the same belief system? They clearly don't.
I haven't. You guys are the ones who want to ban all Muslims. I want to actually distinguish.
But you refuse to make a distinction between Muslim immigrants and the possible security risk of Muslim immigration, the level of screening that should be attempted for Muslim immigrants as opposed to Christian immigrants.
You want to treat my friend Mona El-Tahawi, who is a noted feminist, outspoken feminist Muslim in Egypt, who has been tortured and detained and beaten by the Muslim Brotherhood, who is one of the most important voices in the Reformation of Islam who we should be supporting. You want to treat her the same way you treat every other Muslim in Egypt. You want to say, oh, they're Egypt, that 26% believe in women. I mean, well, how are you going to draw the line in?
The way that I would draw the line is by looking at the philosophy that she espouses, and she doesn't espouse the philosophy of radicalism.
What if I told you she believes in Sharia? Now what?
What? That she believes? It depends what kind of Sharia she's talking about. Sharia that was asked about in the Gallup poll was asked to people who are living in Afghanistan, where similarly, well over 99% of the people believe in honor killings. Okay, so don't tell me.
Hey, I'm against honor killings too, but it's not the same as supporting terrorism. And that's, by the way, what in fact said.
Wait, hold on, that's an amazing statement. So supporting honor killing is not the same as supporting terrorism. So you let in people who want to do honor killings? That's the policy.
I'm saying you can't conflate the two. This shouldn't be this hard, right? I mean, it's saying, like, you know,
so
when Gallup
did the poll,
that's the topic. Gallup said 7% Muslim world can be the states that the countries they looked at can be classified as extremists based on whether they actually supported the 9/11 attack. The 9/11 attack
Right.
was justified, and
well, okay, it's 9/11 attacks, honor killings.
no, it wasn't honor killings. It was
It was honor killings.
The point is, they came to 70%. They came to what, like 15 something?
Was that
something like that?
Well, the polls don't.
Listen, I'm just excited that you would go person by person as opposed to broad countries and broad swaths of regions.
That's been my position.
That's great. I'm good. I wish the rest of your side would join you in that, because that has not been the messaging that
everybody in my side of the conservative movement has. And
guys, 63% of the Republican Party wants to ban 1.5 billion Muslims flat from this country.
It's a total plurality of Democrats.
Yeah, I mean,
No, under 40%.
It's almost 40%. I mean, it's growing, obviously. So the cycle is, okay, so here's the problem that I have here, is that we can talk about what we think of, you'll notice that I never bothered to cite the Quran, for example, because when it comes to religious differences, I don't care whether someone prays 5 times a day in Mecca or 3 times a day in Jerusalem, right? The only thing that I care about is what percentage of a given population is linked to beliefs that are utterly incompatible with Western civilization.
Wait a second.
And if you believe,
You're going to go based on percentages or individual people and their beliefs?
well, when it comes to the level of screening that you use, you have to go based on percentages, and then when it comes to individual, and this is true, and then when it comes to who you let in, you go based on individuals. This is true. This has always been true. We have higher levels of
It's always been true. Oh, it's always been true. As in, we already do it. We always scrutinize people. We already scrutinize. We already. Right. So then, why the heightened demonization of Islam? Why the heightened demonization?
Because, okay, so
why?
it's not a matter of demonizing Islam. Like when the president of the United States refuses to say radical Islamic jihad, what it does lead to is a feeling you lauded political correctness a moment ago. Political correctness is at least partially responsible for the massacres in both San Bernardino and Atlanta. They see something that they may perceive as a security risk, that this is a referendum on whether they are a bad person or not, so the person who's doing it is a member of a minority group, like Muslim minority group, then people won't call cops. This actually happened in San Bernardino. It also happened in Orlando.
There wouldn't be gay bars for terrorists to shoot up, nor would there be the whole existence.
Political correctness is how we use language. It's not how we make
political correctness. Political correctness is not just about how we use language. It's not just about words, and that's where it comes down to radicalism, right? And as Hillary Clinton said, who the hell cares what you say? And as Barack Obama said, no general has ever come to him and said, "Hey, if you just use the phrase radical Islam, that would solve it." Look, the issue is about demonizing the entire faith, right? And making it about Islam as opposed to Islamists, radical Islamists, whatever you want to say. It doesn't matter. The point here is that too many people on the right have been far too sloppy about, and Donald Trump is chief among this, about echoing the worldview of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, which says there's only one kind of Islam, it is radical Islam, and we are at war with it. That is not true. And why do I say radical Islam? Because I talk to, and if you don't know it, go find it. I talk to progressive Muslim theologians, progressive Muslim activists. Yes, there are a lot of them. Sure. And they say, don't do that. You're not helping us. We need to be helping and supporting them. By the way, in this country, 1 out of 2 terrorist attacks has been foiled by tips from the Muslim community. We need to be supporting them and not alienating them. Plain and simple. Don't be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Okay, we are unfortunately close to running out of time. Close. So what I'd like to do is I'd like each of you to take 8 seconds, now make it a minute and a half, to kind of sum up, just either get back to the original topic or make a brilliant point or a great joke. I don't care. So who would like to go first?
And so, to kind of finish in a different place than we started, I think that one of if I'm looking at what's happening in America right now, that really frightens me. It's the growth of tribalism. I wrote this for National Review a couple of weeks ago. This feeling that tribalism on the left, the divisiveness, the racial divisiveness, the idea that we have to stand up for a particular group of people over another group of people, that's wrong. I see it as rising on the right as well in the Trump phenomenon. What I want are central principles that apply to everyone. Central principles that we can agree on that apply to everyone. And I think that those are disappearing rather rapidly, and I think that they're disappearing on the right as a reactionary force, and I think they're disappearing on the left because the left doesn't believe that individual liberty trumps communalism. They don't believe that individuals trump groups. They believe that groups ought to be treated as groups. They talk in terms of blacks and whites and Muslims as opposed to talking in terms of
here's what each individual does, or here's how an individual's philosophy matters, and philosophies do matter. And I think that until we return to the idea that Western civilization is more than just a buzzword, that it's actually a philosophy with basic tenets that are worth protecting, and that people who don't believe in those tenets, people who want to fight those tenets, are the enemies of freedom. And I think that we do have a real problem for America, because Western civilization is worth protecting. And the idea that anything else would have generated the United States of America as it currently stands is ignorant of world history and world situations now.
You've been a fun audience. I think that's an incorrect characterization, so let me end with that. I believe in individual liberty, I believe in individual freedom. The left, as I know it, as I have always known it, has upheld a great tradition in this country of saying, fighting for, and continuing the idea that we are all equal. We cannot deceive ourselves if we believe that we have not always been that way. Historically, this is not a very old country, and it has not always been that way. And so we have, as a nation, come together, stumbling, fighting, but over time, to make a more perfect union, and to increasingly get better at treating every individual equally. That's it. That's all we want. Everybody to be treated equally. And by the way, we're very clear when now, I don't think working class folks are being treated equally compared to the very rich. But I also don't think women are being treated equally compared to men. I don't think people of color are being treated equally compared to white folks. And again, statistics and whatever. The issue here is that saying I want to fix that, saying I want to make this country live up to its promise for everyone, doesn't mean I want to make it worse for you. Saying that now we're going to help address racial inequality, we're going to say Black Lives Matter, saying Black Lives Matter to go back to the hands up, right? Which, yes, you're right, he didn't have his hands up, fine. But the symbolism I stand by, and that is saying that some people's lives should matter equally, is not saying other people's lives should matter less. And the problem is that's what this election is becoming. It's saying if we want to have a diverse, inclusive country, then that's going to hurt white people, it's going to hurt citizens, it's going to hurt men. Bullshit. It's going to make this country better for everyone, as we have always tried to do.
My plan coming in here was to have a coalition ticket for president.